no mistake, empathy is not weak or woke. And by the way, woke just means you give a damn about other people.
Jane Fonda's electrifying presence, whether commanding the stage at the SAG Awards or captivating late-night audiences on Jimmy Kimmel, ignites a firestorm of thought and emotion that leaves an indelible mark. With a voice forged in the crucible of decades-long activism and a mind as sharp as her 2 Oscars suggest, she dismantles tired clichés about compassion and power, weaving a vision that's as revolutionary as it is human. Her words don't just echo, they thunder, challenging us to rethink empathy, resistance, and the very soul of democracy in a world teetering on the edge. This is no mere celebrity spiel. It's a clarion call from a warrior of conscience, demanding we listen, feel, and act. In her stirring speech at the SAG Awards, Jane Fonda masterfully weaves a powerful argument that challenges common misconceptions about compassion and social awareness, framing them as strengths rather than liabilities. She begins by asserting that empathy, a capacity to understand and share the feelings of others, is neither a sign of fragility nor a buzzword tied to fleeting cultural trends. Instead, she positions it as a robust, essential quality for navigating the turbulent times she believes lie ahead. By dismissing the notion that empathy equates to weakness, Fonda taps into a broader cultural debate where emotional intelligence is often undervalued in favor of stoicism or aggression, particularly in political and social arenas. She then cleverly redefines a term that has become a lightning rod in contemporary discourse: woke, stripping it of its politicized baggage and recasting it as a simple, human act of caring for others. This redefinition is both a linguistic power move and a moral stance, suggesting that awareness of others' struggles is not an ideological stance, but a fundamental expression of humanity. In doing so, she bridges a divide between those who might scoff at progressive ideals and those who embrace them, urging her audience to see past labels and recognize the shared value of concern for one's fellow human beings. Her aside about the meaning of woke serves as a subtle yet sharp rebuke to critics who weaponize the term, transforming it from a slur into a badge of honor. This rhetorical flourish sets the tone for the rest of her speech, where she calls for unity and resilience in the face of looming challenges, implicitly aimed at figures like Donald Trump, whose policies and rhetoric she likely sees as antithetical to the empathetic, inclusive vision she champions. Fonda's words here are not just a defense of empathy, but a rallying cry, framing it as a vital tool for resistance and community building in a time of crisis, rooted in her decades-long legacy as an activist and artist.
Back to empathy. A whole lot of people are going to be really hurt by what is happening, what is coming our way. And even if they're of a different political persuasion, we need to call upon our empathy and not judge, but listen from our hearts and welcome them into our tent, because we are going to need a big tent to resist successfully what's coming at us.
Building on her powerful reframing of empathy as a source of strength and unity, Jane Fonda's speech at the SAG Awards seamlessly shifts to a broader, more urgent appeal that underscores the stakes of the current moment. As she accepted her Lifetime Achievement Award, her words carried the weight of decades spent witnessing and resisting injustice. From the McCarthyism era she referenced to the contemporary assaults on workers' rights she directed toward President Donald Trump. Here, she pivots to the human cost of the unfolding challenges, painting a vivid picture of widespread suffering that transcends ideological lines. Her plea is rooted in a recognition that the threats ahead, whether political, social, or economic, will spare no one, demanding a response that prioritizes connection over division. She invokes the image of a big tent, a metaphor for inclusivity and collective strength, suggesting that survival and resistance depend on embracing even those with whom we disagree. This is not a passive call for tolerance, but an active strategy for building a coalition robust enough to withstand the looming storm. Fonda's emphasis on listening with the heart, rather than judging, reflects her belief that empathy can bridge divides, turning potential adversaries into allies in a shared struggle. Her historical references, like Hollywood's defiance during the Blacklist era, lend credence to this approach. She's seen it work before. By drawing parallels to past social movements, she positions the present as a defining chapter, a documentary moment where ordinary people must rise to extraordinary challenges. This perspective elevates her message beyond partisan rhetoric, framing it as a moral and practical imperative. In a time of polarization, her insistence on a wide-reaching, empathetic resistance challenges the audience to rethink their instincts, to see the vulnerable not as others, but as part of a larger us. It's a vision of community that's both inspiring and pragmatic, rooted in the conviction that only together can we face what's coming and emerge with love, beauty, and truth intact.
We must stay in community. We must help the vulnerable. There will still be love. There will still be beauty. And there will be an ocean of truth for us to swim in. Let's make it so.
Following her impassioned call for a broad, empathetic coalition to confront the challenges ahead, Jane Fonda's speech takes on an even more resolute tone as she outlines the actionable steps needed to sustain resistance and hope. Delivered as she accepted her Lifetime Achievement Award, with President Donald Trump's policies on workers' rights in her crosshairs, her words shift from the necessity of unity to the responsibilities it entails. She emphasizes the importance of maintaining a collective spirit, a theme that reverberates through her reflections on Hollywood's stand against McCarthyism and other historic struggles she's witnessed since her first film in 1958. This isn't just about surviving the present. She suggests it's about actively safeguarding those most at risk and crafting a narrative that can carry people through the darkness. Her focus on the vulnerable underscores a moral clarity that has defined her career, from activism to storytelling, while her push for an inspiring vision reveals a strategic optimism. By invoking a future worth fighting for, she challenges her audience to look beyond the immediate chaos and imagine a world still rich with possibility. The nod to Pearl Cleage's imagery, though not directly cited here, reinforces this, painting a post-conflict landscape where human values endure, a powerful antidote to despair. Fonda's language is both practical and poetic, urging not just endurance but creation, a proactive shaping of what comes next. This vision isn't naive. It's forged in the fire of experience, from the Blacklist resistance to civil rights battles, and it demands participation. Her closing charge, a decisive "let's make it so," transforms the speech from reflection to directive, echoing the courage of figures like Norma Ray or Karen Silkwood she'd mentioned earlier. In this moment, she positions the audience actors, workers, citizens as co-authors of a future that must be fought for, together, with unwavering commitment to community and a belief in something better waiting on the other side.
Broke into my house, broke into my bank accounts, taped my phone, opened my mail. He was really something, but Trump is much more dangerous.
Do you think so?
As Jane Fonda took her place on the Jimmy Kimmel show, the stage was set for a conversation that would weave together the threads of her extraordinary life, her accolades as a two-time Oscar winner, her relentless advocacy for human rights, and her unyielding resolve in the face of personal and political storms. The segment kicked off with a burst of energy, sparked by the news of Taylor Swift's endorsement of Kamala Harris, a revelation that drew an enthusiastic "what" from Fonda and set a lively tone. Kimmel, ever the gracious host, showered her with praise, marveling at how great she looked at 87, to which she responded with a philosophical gem. "Anybody can be young, only the lucky get to be old." Their banter, warm and playful, flowed effortlessly as they traded compliments. Her "you look unbelievable" met with his odd "wow" moment of levity that belied the weightier topics to come. But as the applause faded and the discussion turned to the recent presidential debate, Fonda's focus sharpened, her gaze fixed on the broader implications of the night's political showdown. She'd already taken aim at Donald Trump's drill, baby, drill mantra earlier in the interview, tying it to the climate crisis she's long championed through her Jane Fonda climate PAC. But now she pivoted to something more intimate and revealing. With the ease of someone who's faced down power and emerged unbroken, she began to unravel a personal history that cast a long shadow over her critique of the present. Her voice, rich with the authority of decades spent in the trenches of activism from the civil rights era to her arrests under Nixon's watchful eye, transformed the late-night slot into a platform for something far deeper than casual chat. She recounted the invasive tactics of that earlier administration with a clarity that cut through the years, painting a picture of a time when her home, her finances, and her very words were laid bare by a government bent on control. Yet, she didn't dwell in the past for its own sake. Instead, she wielded it as a lens to magnify what she sees as a more formidable danger in Trump. This wasn't a throwaway line or a bid for sympathy, it was a calculated escalation. A bridge from her own battles with authoritarian overreach to a warning about a threat she believes eclipses even Nixon's excesses. Her dismissal of fear in the face of those violations, delivered with a steely nonchalance, stood in stark contrast to the urgency she injected into her assessment of today's stakes. For Fonda, this wasn't just about personal survival anymore, it was about the planet, the vulnerable, and the future generations she's fighting for. Her call to vote with climate in your heart, paired with her invocation of a documentary moment demanding collective courage, pulsed with a fervor that transcended the studio's confines. Trump, in her telling, wasn't merely a political adversary, but a harbinger of a destructive trajectory. One that threatens not just individual liberties, as Nixon once did to her, but the very fabric of life on Earth. This fusion of memory, defiance, and a forward-looking plea turned her appearance into a masterclass in conviction. A rallying cry that echoed beyond the laughter and applause, urging a nation at a crossroads to heed the lessons of her past and rise to the challenges of its present.
Well, we're never going to solve the climate crisis if he is an oil president. His cabinet is an oil cabinet.
As Jane Fonda shifted gears during her exchange on the Jimmy Kimmel show, moving from personal anecdotes and the buzz of Taylor Swift's endorsement of Kamala Harris to the weightier terrain of political accountability, she brought her signature blend of candor and urgency to the forefront. Having already captivated the audience with her reflections on surviving Nixon-era intrusions and her unwavering commitment to climate action, evidenced by her Jane Fonda climate PAC, she now turned her attention to the impeachment proceedings that had gripped the nation. The question from Kimmel about her stance on the unfolding testimony over the past weeks opened a door for Fonda to connect her personal history with a broader critique of systemic failures, particularly those tied to environmental policy. With the ease of someone who spent decades navigating the intersection of activism and power, she launched into an impassioned argument that laid bare the obstacles to progress in a way that felt both immediate and timeless. Her voice carried the weight of experience, from her early days witnessing Hollywood's resistance to McCarthyism to her arrests for climate protests, grounding her perspective in a life spent challenging authority. This wasn't just a casual opinion tossed out for late-night fodder, it was a deliberate escalation, a call to action rooted in her belief that the current administration's entanglements were choking the planet's future. She framed the issue as a clash between entrenched interests and the urgent need for change, her words crackling with frustration at a government she sees as compromised. The fossil fuel industry, in her view, wasn't just a policy influence, it was a pervasive force that had bought its way into the highest echelons of power, forestalling the kind of bold action science demands. Fonda's critique wasn't limited to one figure. It extended to a network of elected officials, particularly Republicans, whose allegiances she argued were misaligned with the public good. Her push for moving beyond this era, whether through elections, impeachment, or any means necessary, reflected a pragmatic urgency, a refusal to let systemic corruption dictate the terms of survival. This moment in the interview underscored her broader narrative. The climate crisis isn't just a policy challenge, it's a moral and political battle that demands accountability, and she was ready to call it out with the clarity of a seasoned fighter.
We hate him.
The system that he represents and that he fosters is anathema to empathy.
Right.
They hate empathy.
Right. Yeah.
You know, empathy goes along with democracy, and that's what we have to fight for.
In the dialogue, Jane Fonda articulates a nuanced perspective on how she perceives Donald Trump and the broader system he embodies, offering a critique that separates the individual from the ideology and mechanisms he supports. Her stance reflects a deep-seated belief in the power of empathy as a cornerstone for societal progress, juxtaposed against what she sees as a fundamentally opposing framework upheld by Trump's influence. This perspective invites a closer examination of how political figures and their associated systems can shape or even undermine democratic values and human connection. Transitioning from this viewpoint, it's worth exploring the broader implications of Fonda's philosophy in the context of contemporary political discourse. Her emphasis on empathy as an essential democratic virtue speaks to a larger tension within society, namely, the struggle between division and understanding in an increasingly polarized world. This tension is not unique to any single administration or figure, but is a recurring theme in how people grapple with opposing ideologies. Fonda's call to reject hate while still condemning harmful actions suggests a delicate balancing act, one that requires individuals to engage critically with ideas and behaviors without losing sight of shared humanity. This approach challenges the often binary nature of political rhetoric, where adversaries are wholly demonized, and instead proposes a more introspective and compassionate framework for addressing conflict. Such a stance is particularly relevant in an era where social media amplifies outrage and entrenched positions, often at the expense of dialogue. By advocating for empathy, Fonda aligns herself with a tradition of thought that sees emotional intelligence as a prerequisite for democratic resilience, echoing the sentiments of historical figures who championed unity over enmity. Yet, this perspective also raises questions about its practicality. Can empathy truly coexist with the fierce opposition needed to confront systems perceived as unjust? This dilemma lies at the heart of her argument, reflecting a broader societal debate about how best to navigate the complexities of power, morality, and coexistence in a fractured world. Her critique of the system, rather than the man alone, points to a structural analysis of governance and culture, urging a focus on the underlying forces that shape behavior and policy. This structural lens invites consideration of how empathy might serve as both a personal ethic and a political tool, potentially bridging divides that seem intractable. As the conversation unfolds, it becomes clear that Fonda's vision is not just about individual feelings, but about fostering a collective ethos that could, in theory, sustain democracy against the tide of antipathy and authoritarianism. Whether this ideal can hold in practice remains an open question, one that resonates far beyond the specifics of any one leader or moment in time. Jane Fonda's rallying cry, steeped in urgency, empathy, and a veteran activist's fire, lit a bold charge against systemic erosion. She fused decades of resistance into a plea for unity, demanding accountability from power and casting empathy as democracy's lifeline. Her words linger with a piercing question: what endures? The call to bridge divides for a resilient future. The rejection of apathy and division, or the vision of a collective stand, reclaiming justice and connection. We want to hear from you. Did her push to confront power stir your own fight, or did her heartfelt case for empathy strike deeper? Maybe you felt democracy's fragility in your own life. Share your take below. We're here to dive in with you. Her voice wasn't just a moment, it was a reflection of our stakes. Where do you stand? Like, subscribe, and tap the bell to fuel this quest for truth and voices like hers. Thanks for being here. Catch you in the next one.